Thank you, Travis. Good evening, viewers, and welcome to tonight's regional news. We begin with news from Brazil. Brazil has signed a deal with Indian pharmaceutical company Biotech for a purchase of 20 million doses of COVID-19 vaccine, Covaxin, news agency Reuters reported. Brazil's health ministry on Thursday signed a contract for delivery between March and May. The ministry said in a statement that the deal is worth 1.6 billion reais, or $290,000, with the first 8 million doses expected to arrive in March. To speed up the buying of vaccines in Brazil and deal with the second deadliest coronavirus outbreak in the world, the ministry said it published new rules last week dispensing with the bidding process. Brazil reported 1,541 new COVID-19 deaths on Thursday, the second highest deadly death toll since the pandemic, being taking total fatalities to 251,498. We now turn our attention to Guatemala. Survivors of Guatemala's 36-year civil war call on court to reverse closure of peace institutions. Guatemala City survivors of genocide and other crimes against humanity during Guatemala's civil war are calling for justice as pending trials against ex-military officials stagnate in court. Indigenous survivors and relatives of victims marched on Thursday in Guatemala City to commemorate the National Day of Dignity for victims of the internal armed conflict, demanding the government uphold its commitment to peace and justice. A civil war between socialist guerrilla forces and the Guatemalan military from 1960 to 1996 left an estimated 200,000 people dead and another 4,000 to 5,000 people disappeared. More than 80% of victims were indigenous Maya civilians. Over the past decade, domestic Guatemalan courts have issued landmark rulings on genocide, sexual slavery, and other crimes against humanity. But pending cases and trials for genocide, mass enforced disappearances, and other Civil War-era atrocities are stagnating in the courts. Victim and survivor movements did celebrate a recent important victory, however. The Constitutional Court ruled earlier this month against an amnesty bill that would have freed perpetrators of crimes against humanity. And now for some more news. Dozens of Venezuelan passengers were left stranded when a repatriation flight organized by the Venezuelan government failed to leave Caracas for Trinidad on Thursday. The flight was scheduled to leave Piarco International Airport at 3:15 p.m. on Thursday, carrying 96 people, 83 adults and 13 children. But the flight by Venezuelan state airline Conviasa was denied landing permission in Piarco. Passengers could not even check in their luggage as all arrangements were to have been made by Conviasa. Officials from the Venezuelan embassy in Trinidad and Tobago were at the airport at 4:25 p.m. Venezuelan Ambassador Carlos Amador Perez received notification from the Trinidadian government that the landing permit had been denied. As news broke of the flight being cancelled, the Venezuelan appeared lost as to what their next move was. They solely left Piarco Airport when it dawned on them that they would have to stay in Trinidad. The list of passengers included people who need to return due to illness, other adults, entire families, and even Venezuelans who obtained their registration cards issued by the Trinidad and Tobago government in 2019 who wanted to return permanently to their country. Passengers were said to have been selected on the basis of need and vulnerability. And finally, for some international news from Nigeria. Gunmen abducted 317 girls from a boarding school in northern Nigeria on Friday, police said, the latest in a series of mass kidnappings of students in the West African nation. Police and the military have begun joint operations to rescue the girls after the attack at the Girls' Science Secondary School in Janjibi Tung, according to a police spokesman in Zamfara State, Mohammed Shehu, who confirmed the number abducted. Gunmen also attacked a nearby military camp and checkpoint, preventing soldiers from interfering while the gunmen spent several hours at the school. It was not immediately clear if there were any casualties. Several large groups of armed men operate in Zamfara State, described by the government as bandits, and are known to kidnap for money and for the release of their members from jail. Peter Hawkins, UNICEF representative in the country, said that they are angered and saddened by yet another brutal attack on school children in Nigeria. He also noted that this is a gross violation of children's rights and a horrific experience for children to go through. He called for their immediate release. And that is all for your regional news. Thank you for joining. Back to you, Travis.